Okay, you'll recall that when we had a quadratic equation, like, I'll use that same one I keep using, x squared minus, it was 2x minus 8. Say it equals 0, or if it's f of x, it doesn't matter whether it's 0 or whether it says f of x, or even if it says y equals y. So we have a quadratic equation, and we recall that we have coefficients in front of each one of these values. We said this was in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. That was called standard form, right? So our a, our b, and our c values were these coefficients and constants. In this case, a would be equal to 1, b would be equal to negative 2, and c would be equal to negative 8. You remember doing that in chapter 8 when we were figuring out the axis of symmetry? Okay, well, we can go back and we can use that for the quadratic formula. What the quadratic formula is it says x, or our solutions, are going to equal the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. That's called the quadratic formula. And if you want to get a song stuck in your head, you can Google this on, just Google the quadratic formula, and somebody has it to the tune of Pop Goes the Weasel, and you'll never get that out of your head again. So I dare you just to Google it.
No, I'm not going to. No, I'm not. I'm going to.
But you will be scarred for life because you'll constantly be singing that in your head.
Well, because
so on this worksheet, you're going to be given something like 3x squared plus 5x minus 8 equals 0. Typically, we use this when it doesn't factor. So if I go to find the factors for this and I can't find factors, then I resolve to the quadratic formula. Okay, I'm not even going to check to see if this is factorable. I'm just going to say, with this, a is equal to 3, b is equal to a positive 5, and c is equal to a negative 8, and I'm going to substitute those values into my quadratic formula. I'm going to say x equals the opposite of b. Don't forget the opposite of that. When we were finding axis of symmetry, and we used the opposite of b over 2 times a, a lot of you on that quiz forgot to do the opposite of b. This says the opposite of b, so in this case that'd be negative 5 plus or minus the square root. Under the square root, we're going to take b and we're going to square it. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. It's going to be 25. Minus 4 times a times c. And all of that gets divided by 2 times a. So the first thing you want to do is make sure you substitute everything in correctly. Now when you square b in this part of the formula, b squared, that number should always be positive. Even if b is a negative number, when you square it, it's going to be positive. So don't make that mistake. B squared is always positive. Okay, when I clean this up, I'm going to say negative 5 plus or minus the square root of, I have 25. Now, you have to multiply these together. How many negative signs do you see? You see 2. That's an even number, so this product is going to be positive. It's going to be plus. You're going to take the 4 times the 3 times the 8. 4 times 3 is 12. What's 12 times 8?
108, I don't know.
96. Okay, so once I count my negatives, I see 2 of them. That's an even number, so I know it's going to be a positive product. I don't have to worry about the sign anymore. I can just take the 4 times the 3 times the 8. It's all divided by 2 times 3 would be 6. Okay, we're going to keep working on what's underneath the radical here. So if I took 25 plus 96, what is that? 121. What's the square root of 121? 11. So this is going to equal negative 5 plus or minus 11 over 6. And I want you to simplify your answer. When the radical's gone, you should be able to simplify this. This says negative 5 plus 11 divided by 6 is one answer. What's negative 5 plus 11?
6.
That's 6. Divided by 6? That gives me an answer of 1. And I have to find the other value, which is negative 5 minus 11, also divided by 6. Negative 5 minus 11 is negative 16 over 6. That is a fraction. What does it reduce down to?
Negative 8 over 3.
Negative 8 thirds. So my two answers for this equation, the two x-intercepts, so if we were graphing it, the two places where it would cross the x-axis are at positive 1 and at negative 8 thirds. The fact I don't have a radical in my answer means that it actually was factorable. We could have found the factors and set them equal to 0. Okay, let's try another one. Let's do 2x squared minus x minus 7 equals 0. Like when we factored, you need to have everything set equal to 0 before you use the quadratic formula. So if you have things over here, you need to move everything to one side so it's set equal to 0. Now you can determine what your a value is. In this case, a would be 2. What would my b value be?
1.
Negative 1. It says minus x, so that's a negative 1. And then what would my c value be? Negative 7. Okay, don't lose those negatives. They're important. So these are the values I'm plugging into the formula. X equals, my answer equals. Start out with the opposite of b.
1.
Since b is negative 1, the opposite of b would be positive 1. Plus or minus square root b squared. If I take negative 1 and I square it, I get a positive 1. Minus 4 times my a value, which is 2, times my c value, which is negative 7. All divided by 2 times a.
Here's 4.
And you can put that down if you want. I'm showing you my substitution. Okay, we've got to simplify it. So it's 1 plus or minus the square root of. This would be a 1. Now count your negative signs. How many do you see? There's 2 again. So an even number of negative signs means I'm going to have a positive product. So again, it's going to be plus. If there's only 1 negative, or if there's 3 negatives, that'd be odd. It would stay minus. But because there's an even number, it's going to go to plus. 4 times 2 is 8, and times 7, 56. And this is over 4. What's 1 plus 56? 57. Now the square root of 57. Can we simplify that? 2 doesn't go into it.
3.
Does 3 go into it?
19.
3 and 19, right? Okay, but 19 is prime, so that doesn't help me. So this doesn't break down. We're just going to leave our answer just like that. That is 2 values. Okay, they're both irrational, so they'd be decimals. But one would be 1 plus that value. And this value would be a little more, 7 point something. Not quite 8. Square root of 64 is 8. So it'd be 1 plus that divided by 4. And then 1 minus that value divided by 4. So there is 2 values there. 2 decimals. but we're going to leave our answer written like that. What that tells me is that I couldn't factor this to begin with. Wouldn't have been factors for me. Okay, you want to see another one, or are you good?
Okay.
Okay. The worksheet has